happen to think that the cover idea that we've evolved now, you know, which is shooting against the all-white seamless, is fantastic. And we're going. I intend that to continue with this style for the indefinite future. On everything, and make this a style of Rolling Stone covers. I love it. It looks beautiful.
That's why they have to always shoot on white, because as long as it's a consistent style, I think it will do the same thing.
New York City was the epicenter of publishing, where the best written and photojournalism was coming from. But the growing pains of the cross-country move was felt by the entire team at Rolling Stone.
We moved from San Francisco together to New York, and I think that was a very difficult move. It was very hard. I mean, it was the beginning of the end of Rolling Stone as I knew it, and it felt much more commercial, you know, moving into New York, and we all had to grow up. You know, we felt like we were staying forever young, you know, working out of San Francisco and doing the work that we did. And, you know, what we did, I think what Rolling Stone instilled in me, and I was so lucky, imagine being a young person working in a place, but they instilled...
You're in your 20s.
In my 20s. You know, they instilled at a very young age that what I did mattered and was important.
Rolling Stone magazine offered the young photographer unbelievable opportunities, but being so new to the publishing world itself, it couldn't provide Annie with the guidance she needed at that stage of her career. Thankfully, the move to New York introduced her to a new artistic crowd, including the art director Bea Feitler. Bea had worked with Richard Avedon at Harper's Bazaar in the 1960s, joined the iconic feminist journalist Gloria Steinem to launch Miss magazine in 1972. But at Rolling Stone magazine, her impact was most greatly felt by Annie Leibovitz. Bea took Annie under her wing and pushed her to look at her work more objectively, taught her the importance of editing and the necessity to approach each sitting with a preparedness that she was unaccustomed to.
I would look at my contact sheets for 5 hours, trying to, with my loop, trying to figure out which one, you know. And she could look at the contact sheets, and in 3 minutes she would have it edited. She knew what was the best one. I didn't understand how she'd do that. I have a good example of when I did something wrong. It was a group cover with Bruce Springsteen and James Taylor and Bonnie Raitt and Jackson Browne and Carly Simon. I think it was an anti-nuke rally. Jann wanted to put them all together, and I went and took the pictures and just kind of threw everyone against the wall and took their picture and came back with the film, you know, to Bea, and she looked at me and she was just so angry. She said, "You know, you really messed up. I mean, here was this, you had this opportunity, and you know, you could have made something of this. You could have made it a very important photograph. You could have done something that would have taken this thing to another level, and you wasted that opportunity." It was a very, very important lesson. The one has to, you know, just take it to another place, and you can make it something that means something to other people.
She started investigating what other photographers had done over the years and concept stuff and bringing in process, and she just brought this wonderful thing to it, which was that a concept somehow was going to be deeply connected, something about this person. I linked that to her picture of Bette on the bed of roses.
We were doing promotion for the rock and roll movie called The Rose. I saw that there were a lot of roses, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to be scratched to death.
I mean, these are just flower market roses, and they came in all thorned. And there was a last minute hysteria because I couldn't have her lie down in thorns. And we were sitting there with like clippers trying to de-thorn these roses, you know, before she came in.
And I looked, and there were so many thousands of roses down on the ground. And I thought, oh, she removed every one. Oh my God, she's so thoughtful. And then of course I was her slave.
I get a letter a week after things comes out from Avedon saying, you know, "Dear Jann, Annie's cover of Bette is the best solution for a magazine cover I've seen in 30 years.
I think that Bette Midler was a very important picture because it was the beginning of trying to think of how to do a setup photograph.
She kept doing that. I mean, Fleetwood Mac on that mattress shot from it, brilliant. And they all had been having affairs with each other. So here, without saying that, here they all were in the same bed and twisted around, and this one with that one on sheets. I mean, it was genius. When I think of that Blues Brothers cover, the idea when I first heard it, oh, paint their faces blue. I thought, oh, we can do better than this. You know, that's so, obvious and dumb. But done, once done, it's stupendous.
They were very reluctant, and they felt, they had basically were frontmen to. They had hired some of the greatest, musicians to back them, and they felt that it might offend them if they put on blue paint, and they had like the best. They had hired some of the best musicians, and so they were very reluctant. And Dan said, "I'll do it, whatever you want." And Belushi said, "Okay." I really basically got a roll off, and then Belushi sort of stormed off. I had a roll or two off, and then he stormed off. And he didn't talk to me for about 6 months, and then it calmed down, and we worked again.
It got to be that I would walk into a room, and this is after 3 or 4 or 5 years working for Rolling Stone. And my subject, who would be supposed to be really in my frame, is suddenly walking up to me, and my frame is, getting and saying, "Oh, hi, Annie, how are you? What's going on?" And blah, blah. And the dynamics have changed. I could no longer be, just sort of invisible. I mean, suddenly your subject was sort of, not only was he sitting there talking to you, and not being involved in his life so that you could just photograph whatever was going on. He was suddenly saying, "What do you want me to do?" And that sort of, I don't know, what are you doing? Or, it's, and, I think that I became more comfortable with something that sort of said, this was posed and this is set up.
I love the Steve Martin picture. I see a portrait of Steve Martin not being like a face shot or something, but Steve Martin is more of a concept than let's say a portrait, than a head shot. So we sat down in his living room in L.A., and he was looking around his living room, and he had just acquired a Franz Kline painting, and which of course I've only seen them in museums. They cost like $1 million or something. Not quite $1 million, it's exaggeration, but so he said, "Well, I'd like to be in that painting, So I looked at the painting, and first I saw Steve as a big black, dot, in the painting. But I said, "Okay," and we hired a Disney scenic painter to come in and paint him, and then we did it right in his living room. And I love that it has it's set up, but it also has a lot of elements of realism involved in it. It is Steve, it is his living room, it is his painting, and it's his idea, which I think it really shows him.
With each story, Leibovitz grew more confident in her execution, but there is one such cover whose impact was stronger than she could have ever realized.